Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. We haven't had an update on our Japan Red E92 M3 for a while. That's because after we picked it up, I haven't really been driving it because I didn't want to drive it properly until I'd had the rod bearings done. Now, I didn't want to tempt fate and drive it, and for me to suffer the issue that some people have suffered when the rod bearing spins. So before we go any further with this car and fit the inventory plenum and do a stage 2 on it, Aston's going to fit a fresh set of OE rod bearings to the car, so then we can carry on with doing the small bits that we want to do to it. So I'll let Aston take over from now, show you the process, show you why there's an issue on these cars, and I'll join you at the end.
Now that I've got the E92 on the ramp, I can begin with the rod bearing service. The first thing I'll do is drain the oil from the sump with the two plugs, one here and one at the front. While the oil's draining, I'll bring the car back down and go under the bonnet. While I'm under there, I'll remove the oil filter and any excess oil in the oil filter housing, and fit the new genuine BMW oil filter, and then torque the oil filter cap to specification. And I will also fit the engine support so that we can get ready to drop the subframe. So now that I'm back underneath the car, I can start the process of removing the under trays so that I can drop the subframe and remove the sump. So the first thing I'll remove is the felt under tray at the front, and the metal under tray for the engine, and the under tray at the back for the gearbox. Once I remove those, I can disconnect the drop link. I can undo the bolts for the subframe at the front, in the middle, at the rear, underneath these covers as well. Also undoing the engine mounts, which are bolted to the subframe. Disconnecting the power steering lines at the front. Undoing all of the electrical connectors at the back with the lambda plugs that are fitted across the back of the engine. Disconnecting the steering rack at the universal joint, allowing me to drop the subframe. Then once I've done all of that, I can hang the subframe down and remove the bolts for the sump and drop the sump out. So now that I've removed the sump from the engine, we can take a closer look at what the inside of an S65 bottom end looks like. You've got the oil pump at the front, which is chain driven, and the oil lines connected to it, which are running along here. You've also got, just inside these gaps, which you can just about see, is the crankshaft itself, with each one of the connecting rods wrapped around it. Between these connecting rods and the crankshaft is the bearing shells that we're going to be changing today. So now that I've given you a quick explanation of the components of the engine, I can go ahead with changing the shells. First things first, I need to remove these oil lines in order to access each one of these caps to remove them and change the shells. So now that I've changed the shells in our car, we can take a closer look at the old shells and the reasons why we change them. In front of me here, I've got the shells that I just removed from our M3. Our particular model is a 2012 with 68,000 miles, which has the later style shells. The wear shown on these is around average for what we see on that kind of mileage. But if you compare those to a set that we've got here of an older style, you can see that these are significantly worn, and that's shown by the copper here on the top shells. This particular vehicle only had 62,000 miles, which is around 6,000 miles less than our car, which indicates that it's not always the mileage of the vehicle that depends on how worn they are. It's also down to how the car has been looked after. So in case some of you spent the last couple of minutes wondering what these are and why they wear, I'll give you a brief description using this N55 crank and a piston and conrod assembly I have from our recent F90 build. As you can see inside the conrod, you've got the bearing shells. You've got the top one and the bottom one. This wraps around the crankshaft and the crankshaft rotates inside. The purpose of the bearing shell is to prevent the conrod and the crankshaft from wearing against each other. In the S65 and the S85 engine in particular, the tolerances between the rod bearing shell and the crankshaft are very tight. So when the engine's cold and the oil's thick, it doesn't give sufficient lubrication to prevent the parts from wearing. If the vehicle is driven hard from cold, it can cause excessive wear, which is what we believe happened to this 62,000 mile car. Although we have replaced the rod bearing shells, we don't consider this to be a lifetime fix. We consider it to be a serviceable item. As long as you're warming your engine up correctly by keeping the revs under 3,000 RPM until its operating temperature, and you're carrying out regular oil changes, you shouldn't have to worry about a rod bearing failure. However, if it was my own car, I would prefer to change them again at around 70,000 miles due to the fact they are designed to wear. So I hope that gives you a bit more information on what the rod bearings are and why they wear, and I'm going to go and put the car back together again.
So you join me back in the car and I can finally rev the car out and enjoy the red line without having to worry about the rod bearing spinning. So we have had this car for a while, we've just not had time to actually get it into the workshop and change the rod bearings for ourselves. Next stage for this car is to do the modifications we want to carry out, and they are threefold. So firstly, the E-Venturi plenum airbox lid and intake finished in matte carbon. Also got some BMW M Performance carbon to fit on the exterior, and that will involve the front flippers and the rear spoiler. And finally, Evolve Stage 2 package with the primary cat delete and also the GTS DCT software. So that should really wake the car up, release some more of that V8 exhaust noise. But I'm really looking forward to the E-Venturi plenum because I've driven plenty of customers' cars with those on, and that's really the reason why we wanted to buy this car again, just so we could enjoy that induction note. And that's going to be it for this car. It's a competition pack for the road. It handles really well and don't really feel the need to do much else. We're just going to do those three things and really enjoy the car and hopefully get it out on some road trips. So that's it for now, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you'd like to watch more of this project, you can do so over here. If you'd like to watch what YouTube suggests you might like from our other videos, you can watch that over here. If you like this video, please click on the thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. If you guys have any questions, please drop them in the comment section and we'll do our best to answer them for you.